Get ready to tune in, turn back the dial, and rediscover the airwaves of yesteryear. This is Echoes from the Past, your backstage pass to the shows that changed everything.
Paladin, the gun for hire from Have Gun Will Travel, is such a fascinating character when you really stop and think about it. I mean, here's a guy who could have leaned all in on the tough gunslinger stereotype, but he didn't. Instead, he's layered, complicated in all the right ways. Played by John Denner, Paladin wasn't just about, showing up, taking the money, and getting the job done. Sure, he worked for people who could pay him, but he also had this moral compass, like this inner drive to help the ones who couldn't afford him, when they truly needed it. And when he discovered his employer wasn't exactly playing fair, that's when things got messy. For them, not Paladin. He didn't hesitate to turn the tables. It kind of makes me think about a moment early in my media career. I remember working on this project, and it was my first big break, So here I am, young, excited, just eager to make an impression. Midway through, I started noticing some questionable calls from the team leadership. Like, not crooked, but definitely not transparent either. And the thing was, walking away from it, it would have meant, giving up a lot. But staying, that felt like compromising on my gut. So I spoke up, and I kind of hedged everything on that moment. Thankfully, it worked out, but wow, it taught me how crucial it is to act in line with your values when things are on the line. Anyway, Paladin somehow did that over and over again. Every story about him just reinforces how he balanced being this, principle-driven kind of guy in a profession that didn't usually cater to conscience. He's one of those characters you sit with long after the story's done, trying to unravel the choices he made and why. So let's dive into some of the standout episodes from Have Gun Will Travel. One of the more recent stories, Skeeter Hickshaw and Sam Crow, really stood out to me. The plot revolved around, this unlikely duo trying to defend their land from a corrupt mining company. But it's not your typical underdog story because Paladin steps in to, level the playing field. And just like that, justice becomes this intricate dance of moral dilemmas and personal stakes. Then there's Talika, which is, honestly, one of the more emotionally charged episodes I've heard. It centers around a small village caught between two feuding factions. Paladin once again finds himself in this position where violence feels inevitable. But instead of reaching for his gun, he leans into his ability to negotiate. It's a reminder of how he'd rather resolve issues peacefully, even when the odds stack heavily against him. But if diplomacy fails, Paladin isn't one to shy away from, let's say, more direct action. What really ties these episodes together is this recurring theme of justice that isn't always black and white. Paladin doesn't just swoop in, wave a magic wand, and make everything okay. No, he gets into these messy situations where justice feels like a choice between, a lesser evil and a greater good. It's layered, kind of like the man himself. And it's fascinating how these stories echo broader societal questions. Back then, listeners were tuning in during a time of, let's just say, social shifts and uncertainties. It makes me wonder, how much of Paladin's approach to morality and fairness was shaped by the cultural mindset of the era? These stories weren't just entertainment. They reflected and maybe even shaped the audience's sense of right and wrong. That brings me to one of the more fascinating aspects of radio dramas like this: their power to influence public perception. Have Gun Will Travel, in its own way, didn't just tell stories. It kind of acted like a mirror to society. You can see it in something as simple as the way the show explored. The blurred lines between good guys and bad guys. It's almost as if, when we think about Have Gun Will Travel, its cultural impact, it's hard to overstate, really. Here's a show running in the 50s and 60s that wasn't just another Western. It dug into themes that were, surprisingly deep for its time. Morality, justice, redemption. It took these big ideas and kind of, distilled them into these compelling bite-sized radio dramas. And let's talk about genre for a sec. Sure, on the surface, this was a Western, but I think it transcended that. It blended drama, a bit of mystery, even philosophy at times. It made listeners question, not just what was going to happen next, but why the characters did what they did. That's not something you always got with radio dramas. This wasn't just popcorn entertainment. It aimed higher. Something else that stands out to me is its reach. I mean, decades later, Have Gun Will Travel still resonates with people. That says a lot, doesn't it? And sure, there have been regional restrictions over the years, but, isn't it amazing how this series has stayed relevant? It's been rediscovered by new generations who appreciate, let's say, its timeless storytelling, even if they have to jump a few hoops to hear it. And that brings me to the storytelling itself. This show was a bridge, in many ways, a way to connect the old time-tested tropes of traditional radio dramas with a more modern, layered approach to narratives. It's not all cowboy hats and shootouts. It's nuanced. And I think that's why it resonates. It reminds us that good storytelling doesn't depend on, bells and whistles. It's about character. It's about heart. I think that's the legacy of Have Gun Will Travel. It's not just a story about a man. It's a story about humanity, about these principles that, stand the test of time, the need to do what's right, even when it's hard, to use intellect over brute force, but to never step away when action's needed. Paladin wasn't perfect, far from it, but maybe that's the point. He felt real. And on that note, I think that's all for today. I hope you've enjoyed this little journey through Have Gun Will Travel. It's been a joy to explore the layers of a show that honestly still makes me think and reflect. So thanks for tuning in, and until next time, stay curious, stay inspired.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the airwaves of the past. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the classic radio shows that shaped generations and left a lasting legacy. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode of Echoes from the Past. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to share it with fellow fans of history, storytelling, and vintage radio magic. Until next time, keep your dial set to the golden era and let the echoes of the past remind us of the timeless power of radio.